Hello, guys, and welcome to our podcast. We're called the Three Hokagis. I am Marvin,
I'm Anna.
I'm Miguel.
and welcome to our own little corner of the internet. So we are the one podcast that talks about everything and nothing, and that mostly has to do with anime. We're three little weebs, and today we're gonna talk about one specific anime that Miguel gently recommended, which is Erased. So we should get it started first as to guys, what did you think of the anime?
Do you want to go first, Anna?
Sure. Honestly, I really liked it. I did not know anything about Erase, so I didn't come in with any sort of expectation of anything since I had not been spoiled of absolutely anything. So I came in fresh and I really, really liked it. I really liked the topics. I really liked the story. It was interesting, right? It was actually it explored many things in just 12 episodes.
Do you want to give us a rundown of the story?
Like a synopsis or,
Mhm.
or like, well, basically the story goes that we follow this guy called Satoru, and his life is quite simple. Like, there's nothing particularly spectacular going on about him except the fact that he has this kind of I would say like this kind of magic slash power that makes him go back in time like 5 minutes or so whenever a tragedy, sorry, or something bad is gonna happen around him, and so that he can prevent it. So that's basically the premise. We get this guy who has this particular power to prevent stuff from happening, and well, the story goes from there. But given the fact that time travel kind of thing obviously makes the story very interesting, and I really like the characters. Some characters were developed to the point where I like them a lot. So I really, really like the story. I would recommend this anime, to be honest.
What about you, Miguel? What did you think?
Um, my overall thought was that I was actually a little bit, worried about how we would address this anime for the podcast because I felt it had so much interesting themes and topics, and I couldn't figure out which one to pick to actually discuss. I liked a lot the storyline of the anime. It's just 12 episodes. I thought it was great. It was really engaging. There are some recurrent topics that you can find in other animes, like the revival. I think that's the name of like the power that what's the name of the
Mm-hmm.
of Satoru? Yeah,
Yep.
Satoru. Yeah, maybe you can see that in other animes, but I think there were very interesting topics that are explored, like family dynamics, that are worthwhile. So I would definitely recommend it. There are certainly some plot twists that make you think, and we were actually discussing a little bit about that before starting this episode, so we will go more in depth about that. But overall, I liked it. I think it's worthwhile, and I would definitely recommend it.
Pretty well. I guess I'll have to join you guys on this one because for me it was a very big surprise because I didn't know what to expect from this anime. I just went in pretty much blind, and I decided to be like, let's give it a shot. And none of us had watched it before this podcast, so we really wanted it to be our first authentic experience, right? We didn't want it to be affected by anything, and honestly, it wasn't affected by anything for me, at least because I discovered new things. Like you were saying, there's a lot of concepts and notions that you can see in other pieces of media. I was thinking about different movies, maybe even different animes, but I had never seen something like this. And what I thought was interesting was it's a 12 episode anime, so it's really short. It's 240 minutes, give or take, because it's like 20 minutes per episode. And it felt like a long movie because there's so much to pack in each episode, and it went on and on and on. But I never felt bored. Like, I was taking notes during the entire anime, and there's only one episode where I might have had two lines. It was episode 8. It was right in the middle. But even then, it was still interesting because the story kept moving. Honestly, I really, really liked it. The one thing that I wanted to mention first, I don't know what you guys thought about that, is that on the website that I watched it, it qualified the anime as a seinen, so an anime for adults. And I was not. When you watch it, you know, but when you start, you're like, what do you mean an anime for adults? It makes sense later, but when you start watching it, it's very surprising because you're like, what do you mean anime for adults? What did you guys think about that?
I agree with you. I think you wouldn't realize that maybe until the end,
Mm-hmm.
last couple of episodes. But overall, well, and I guess because of the family dynamics portion, there's certainly some, physical abuse of children.
Yeah.
So definitely those could be sensitive topics. you know, it's a serious thing, but like now that I think of it, maybe there's a reasoning behind that. But the first impression is like, uh, this should be, children friendly, but then later on, maybe not. So I hadn't really think about that until now, but yeah.
Yeah, actually, I didn't know that it was a manga or an anime for adults, but it makes sense. Like what Miguel said, it's like not too like not even like I think that in episode 2 we already find out that this girl was like abused by her parents or something, and I'm like, yeah, that doesn't seem very shunning of them, you know.
I mean, it does very much talk about child murder. So it is also something that you don't see every day. Like when you watch Naruto, you see kids killing each other pretty much, but
But that's okay. It's alright.
That's okay. It's Naruto.
Kids
It's
can kill each
fine.
other.
You can kill yourself with the Rasengan, but with the bullet,
Right.
Too much.
right.
too much. No guns. No.
I feel maybe because also this anime is more like a, I guess, more real life storyline than Naruto, like the ninja world, maybe where killing is normalized. But I think maybe that the question
That's
was a
true.
trap. You did that intentionally to trap us.
Honestly, that question went by itself because I was thinking about the anime, and it's true that when I watched the categories, I was kind of taken aback because I was like, I was watching this little cute love story between kids, and sure, there's a lot more fucked up things that happen like all around, but I was seeing this, and my brain had a hard time connecting the two. At the same time, I knew it was an adult thing that I was watching, but because it's wrapped around something that has to do with kids, usually kids animes like My Hero Academia, like Naruto, like all those animes, they're very much shonens and therefore like big kids to teens. So I assumed that it was gonna be something similar, but as a matter of fact, because it has to do with like killing kids and everything, and you mentioned something that rings true to my head, it is the fact that this is something that could have happened.
Yeah.
If at the end of this anime, aside from the time travel, you told me that those cases were based off real life, I would believe
Yeah.
you. Because this is something that is incredibly realistic and that has happened before. So seeing this, I was not surprised as to why this took like a dark turn really
Right.
quick.
Yeah, no, that happens like every day, it's a very real and common situation. So I feel, yeah, it makes sense, that part, the rating, but yeah.
I mean, it also makes sense that this is like an adult anime, not so well. Obviously, there's the obviously adult parts that regard child kidnapping, child murder, of course. But to me, the part that feels adult-ish that you wouldn't find in a shonen normally, it's like, for example, the topics that surround the main character that are like, for example, when he says that he doesn't have human connections with anyone, that he wishes for like a different life, like he's trying to achieve something, he cannot get it, his life is super like whatever, his relationship with his mom is strained, and all these things are things that children don't see.
Yeah.
You know, and specifically, and it shows in the anime, the fact that as a child he's like, I never realized that my mom did this for
Yeah.
me, and now that I get to come back, I get to appreciate what she did
Yeah.
for me. This is obviously something targeted towards adults, so it makes sense that even if the story had like the children things or whatnot, I think it would obviously be targeted towards I don't even know if
More
young
adults.
adult, but I think maybe a young adult audience similar to the age of the main character, who's like 29
Yeah.
in the beginning.
Did you feel like you could relate to that?
I feel like it's extremely relatable, given that we're very close to that
Yeah.
age.
Yeah. Exactly.
I feel it wildly relatable. Everything that was happening in the beginning, like, to real.
And what was interesting about specifically the time travel aspect of everything is you see what things are ending up to be. So when the anime starts, you see the relationship of Satoru with his mom, and it's strained. It's very strained, and you have this certain preconceived notion about his mom because you see his mom through his eyes, and that's very important. You see, the first thing that I noted was I wrote alcoholic mom because the first episode she lies down, she steals his bed, she puts down 3 or 4 cans of beers next to the bed, and you're like, you're meant to think that this mom is a bad mom.
Yeah.
Immediately you're thinking something is wrong, and then you understand and you piece the things together and you're like, yeah, okay, so she's a bad mother. And like many things in this anime, and we're gonna go in depth with that a little later, everything gets turned on its head and you realize that all the preconceived notions that you had up until this point, they're not real, and what you see is not what you get. Is the same thing with the little girl, with Kayo. It's the same thing with Satoru. It's the same thing with everyone. Everyone has baggage, and I feel like that was such an important thing, and it connects to what you were saying, Anna. It's like this baggage, we all have it one way or another. We might have heavy ones, light ones, but we all go through life with this thing that we're carrying behind us. And in this case, the time travel represents all of us's idea of what if I could go back and make things right.
Yeah.
Who never thought about this? Who never thought if I could relive this conversation, I would have done things differently? If I could have come back as a kid, would it have been the same? Like, I know a lot of people who have gone bullied, who have gone like abused, who have gone into, that's the hard part, but you can go into even the light things of like, oh, I said something stupid when I was 12. I wish I could go back and not say it. In this case, he can. He doesn't control it, but he can. And that's what snowballs into this whole thing. And it's rare to see something that is like that real, and it kind of takes you right here and it doesn't leave you the rest of the anime. I felt attracted to this anime, like it intrigued me. It was like, keep watching. And honestly, I watched the thing in one go and I don't regret it. I think I would recommend people to watch it this way, to actually watch from 1 to 12 just right away.
Yeah, I agree. On the topic of family, maybe if we still wanna go more in depth on that.
I
Yeah,
think so.
I did think a similar thing that you were saying about, who hasn't thought about actually going back and making something right. And maybe, when you're a child, of course, all of us have parents, we can struggle a lot to see life through their eyes, why they behave that
Yeah.
way, why they made a certain decision, and we can judge them very hardly, similar to what we as the viewer, the spectator, at the beginning of the anime. I also was like, a little bit uneasy about the mom, and you don't know why, and you're just, I think maybe because she left the hospital when Satoru had the accident, and she was like, yeah, I think at that
Yes.
point you're like, oh,
right.
maybe she is a
I
cold
just
mother, and you're like, she seemed very pragmatic in her approach to her son.
And she didn't want to stay with them inside the
Exactly.
apartment.
But then at the same time, she is traveled to take care of him and stay there,
Yeah,
and cooked him, and she was actually there for him. But you are like,
she was.
uh, you know, thrown off a little bit, I guess, at the beginning.
Mom? What are you doing here in the middle of the night?
You're just in time for supper, dear.
On what her approach to parenting is, but yeah, I feel that is very important. And any person, like, there's this saying, no one knows what they have until they lose it, right? I think
Yeah.
definitely this anime, like Erased, makes you question, um, you know can I, of course none of us can go back, but can I still change my perspective? Can I still change to look
Mm.
at look at life from the eyes of another person, try to understand my parents, and try to value the good intentions and the good moments. I think that takes a lot. Maybe some people can never do that, but I guess it's a good message to aspire for.
It is.
Yeah, it is. Actually, I had an epiphany right now that you mentioned the mom because I had completely forgotten that in the first episode, Satoru goes through an accident and he ends up in the hospital, and the mom is not at the hospital. Like, she just goes home and cooks for him, yes. But I mean, she's not a bad mom in the present day, but you can tell there's a weird relationship between both of them, right? Like, Satoru doesn't want her there, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm here for you," but it's still kind of awkward, you know. And that I just remember that at the last thing, she spent 15 years
Yeah.
Yeah.
caring for him like no one else would, watching for him, cleaning him, doing like exercises with his
Yeah.
like legs and shit so that he wouldn't, so he could still, like, his body would work. The change of relationship from him with his mom from the beginning to the end is so drastic
It is.
that his mom was never a bad mom, but the fact that things were changed, his approach changed, her approach changed. And something that you mentioned at some point in the conversation that we had in the beginning is that the term belief, right? It is really important in this anime about believing in other people. And the fact that in the beginning, I remember that she mentions not believing Satoru regarding who was the child predator, but in general,
She
we can
never
say that
believed
she
him,
did
yeah.
not believe in him, like, period. And in the end, she believes in him so much that she's willing to take him for 15 years because she knows that he's gonna come back. She, like, the belief in him is such a 180-degree turn that she's willing to take this step for her son, and that actually works out, right? And it's like, it's actually crazy, like the whole point of showing how your relationships change with minor changes. It's like in the beginning, it's minor changes that progress into something bigger, right?
I just got
But yeah, I just
goosebumps, like honestly, because that part was super
Same.
powerful. Like, when you see that, something that you just reminded me, I wanted to talk to discuss, the topic of unconditional love, or
Mm.
especially in family dynamics, whether that's possible. And at that point, after almost the end of the storyline, you see that change, and you wonder, you know, how is this possible? Because
Yeah.
we can um, take that for granted, but if you analyze other characters like Kayo, you realize that that's not, you cannot take that for granted. She got a completely different mom that came through, a lineage, so to speak, of family trauma, and
Mm-hmm.
her mom took it out on her. and she never received that, example of paternal unconditional love. That to a certain extent, it is true. I agree. What was the name of the mom? I forgot.
Of
Satoru's
Satoru.
mom. Yeah.
I wrote it down. Hold on.
Okay.
Her name is Sachiko.
Sachiko. Right. Um, it is true that towards the end of the story, after a few revivals, sorry, it's not a revival. It's what's it called? Revival? Is it?
Yeah,
Yes,
it was a
Oh yeah,
revival.
okay. I was like, okay. After a few revivals, she took it to a whole different level,
Yeah.
taking care of him while he was in a coma for the 15 years. But even so, before that, when he was trying to save Kayo and the other girls, I forgot their names again, but the three girls that were kidnapped,
Yeah.
he was trying to save them, and she was like actually there for him. He was like motivating him when he brought Kayo to to their home. She took her in with no problem. So
Mm-hmm.
definitely that's something that I would like to hear your opinion. Do you think every person gets to experience that in their life, that reference or example of unconditional love from in the family, and what impact can that have not having that example?
I believe that in this case, for example, I believe that something that is really important that changed the dynamic between Satoru and his mom is the fact that there was trust. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
because he always said she's a demon. That's something that he always said about her, right? But if you realize in the beginning when he says she's a demon, he's like, "Ugh, she's unbearable," right? And by the end, when he
It
says
changes. I was gonna talk about that.
yes, when he says that she's a demon, it's almost like a happy thing. It's like, oh, thank God that she has this weird intuition that she does, right?
Because he keeps mentioning clairvoyance, that she sees things that he doesn't have to tell her.
Like
She has
a
intuition.
like a witch. That
Yeah,
I,
like a
Yeah, like a
witch.
witch. Like she would always somehow know his intentions. Like even if he didn't tell her anything, he would be like, "Ah, you're going on a date," and he would be like, "What? How do you even know that I'm going on a date?" Right?
Mhm.
And I feel like when he came back to save Kayo, Kayo, right?
Okay.
Kayo.
Kayo.
He started trusting his mom because he started seeing that she was actually there to help him, because you know how children are, like you want to do a good thing but you're so convinced that your parents are not going to help you because you're like, no, they're gonna like stop me, they're gonna like ruin my plans or whatever. And eventually he realizes that his mom is on his side. He actually, his mom realized that he wants to help this girl and she's going to help him even if it sounds like the craziest idea. And this slow build of trust that they get, like very slowly, but you start noticing like quite quickly, is the thing that I think becomes into this unconditional like thing of you trust me, I trust you, and that trust is never gonna be broken because I know the kind of person that you are and you
Yeah.
know who I am, right? Like they came to know each other as like he knows that his mom is like someone that he can count on 100% because she proved that to him.
Son of a bitch.
And he proved that he's a son. I guess that not that he's a son, but he's someone who is worth giving
Yeah.
every bit of effort to, because he's like doing such good that obviously you want to help him. Even not just his mom, like his friends are the same. They're going to help him because it's worth helping him, right? And I do feel like in the case of Kayo, it's like obviously the flip side of the coin, that it's like, because I feel like at some point, Satoru tells to Kayo that they have like a similar situation because they both have like single-ish moms, because really her dad is not with them, like Kayo's dad is not there. And it's like, yeah, you guys are similar, but very easily you start noticing that they're complete opposites, right? And Satoru starts noticing that his house, for example, is full of love. Her house is not. And this, I think, like obviously goes to show like the importance to me of unconditional love, how it can affect anyone. Like the way that he grew up without this sort of relationship with his mom, he ended up being someone that had really nothing, that didn't know. And it's not just about the mom, it's just like in general. He grew up to be someone who didn't have connections with people. And then turning that to something else made him become someone who's loved by many, who people care about, who people trust, who people believe, right?
Yeah.
He inspired people, and the thing is, I wanted to mention a couple more things to connect what you guys were saying about the unconditional love, the themes of family, and also the whole thing of time travel. Is that there is a moment, the first time that Satoru goes back in time and he sits down at a table with his mom, and he has this inner monologue where he says, I forgot how those moments felt like.
俺にもこんな時間があったんだ。忘れていた？いや、気づかなかったんだ。何気なく過ごしていた。俺が失ってしまった時間。
He says, I forgot that those were actually nice, and I always took them for granted, and I never realized how good they were until I didn't have them anymore. And that's what Miguel was saying. You don't realize what good you have until you don't have it anymore. And to me, it was crazy that it happened so immediately, that he realized this, and that shaped the entire trajectory of the story, because Satoru went, realized what he had and he didn't have anymore. So suddenly he changed people's lives, but he changed his own life as well. And to connect the themes of trust as well, because it's so important. Did you guys remember that when in the first episode Satoru's mom goes to his place and asks him if is there a direct train line to Ueno?
Yeah.
And he says no. And later on in the show, as a kid, he talks to his mom and he says, don't forget what I'm gonna say, there is a direct train line to Ueno. And the mom doesn't understand, obviously, because it's not like anywhere near her concerns. But to me, what mattered between Satoru and his mom is the whole phrase of, if you love someone, set them free. He loves his mom, and the fact that he ended up telling her that was a selfless act, because he wanted what was good for her, because she wanted what was good for him. So they ended up having this equal exchange because they were on the same foot of finally understanding each other. And the mom keeps saying, as every other character in the show, mostly Kenya, the mom, and a couple other people, they keep saying to Satoru how much he matured, how he seems to be a different person. And it all rounds back to that's adult Satoru who goes back in time and who finally makes things right. And because he doesn't act like a kid, he can finally advance and realize that things beyond himself are more important. And this leads to something that I wanted to talk about. There's a very big theme in this show around the notion of being a hero. You see it because he follows this Super Sentai character on TV, the one with the mask, and that's like his idol, and he wants to be like him. And in turn, he ended up being a hero. But what does being a hero mean? And in this case, I think being a hero means to be selfless, and in turn, committing the ultimate sacrifice of sacrificing yourself for the good of others. And I think that's what happened at the end. I don't know what if you guys have an opinion on that.
Well, talking about the hero thing, because I remember specifically this thing that he says at the very, very end, in the last episode. To him, being a hero is being selfless. He mentions that this character is selfless, but at the time where things become really difficult with the villain, right, for the hero, he knows that he can count on people to help him, on certain friends.
The fighting alone, I remember.
Yeah.
Yes, that he fights alone. So I feel like his vision of a hero changed, actually.
Yeah.
Because it's even shown at the fact that he's a mangaka, right? That they told him his story has no heart, basically, in the beginning.
And I think in the first episode, sorry to interrupt you,
Yeah.
it starts by like this guy telling him, you have to dig deep into yourself. right?
Yeah.
Like if you want a good story, and at the end, the last episode, he's like, the same guy tells him, you always come up with the best stories when you go and dig deep into yourself, and it's
Because
like
he says his stories have no personality.
exactly, yeah. Sorry,
And that
go
thing,
ahead.
no, yeah, and I feel like it changed because obviously, like this whole thing about being a hero or being like a main character, like in a story, to him, changed perspectives throughout this entire throughout the entire anime, right? Through the whole 12 episodes, because in the beginning, for him, a hero is, he doesn't mention exactly what it is, but you can just assume that it's like someone who fights alone and defeats evil, whatever. But at the end, he specifically mentions that when the hero is about to fail, he has people with him. And that's exactly what happens to him, and that's exactly what changes him, is that he's no longer in solitude anymore. He's no longer afraid to make connections with people. He actually cares about people. And I feel like, on top of what you said about what the hero is defined as, which is someone selfless, which he completely became selfless in order to actually help, not just Kayo, but every single person who was about to get kidnapped, like his friend and the other girl from the other school. Like, he became completely selfless, and he was just like, I need to help these people. Like, it doesn't matter. It's not just about changing this one thing, right, to prevent his mom dying. I think that it became a bigger thing, and that made him realize, like, his true meaning of a hero is someone who's selfless, but it's also someone who has people behind him, people who are willing to help him, even if he's a hero. Like, he understood that heroes also need help and need, like, he needs to trust others. Like, they're gonna come in to help him, like, when he most need to.
But you were mentioning the end. There is a sense at the end that mirrors his superhero and him, where he says, this superhero, I think he's called Wonder Guy or something.
Yeah.
He says, at first he fought and he kept losing his battles. He mentions that
Yeah,
his first fights he always lost, but he always got back up.
yeah,
And eventually he could count on his friends. And that's shown in the very first episode, when he prevents the little boy from getting run over by the truck, that he does it on his own. And sure, he wins, quote unquote, because the kid is not dead, but he gets in the hospital, and the driver also gets in the hospital.
No, the
So-
driver was dead.
The driver was dead.
had a heart attack while driving. Yeah,
Yeah.
Right, he had a heart attack. But they do say that they found the driver and he ended up into a wall, so it wasn't like,
And that he was left unscathed, but
he was
dead.
already dead. But he already sacrificed himself, so you could see that Satoru was not a bad person. But that was his first fight that we saw, and he kind of lost. So I think
Right.
it was interesting to see this and his evolution of letting his friends help him little by little, until he had to make the one big step at the beginning and at the end, but he always had people that had his back. The very last scene where he defeats the villain, he has the literal safety net waiting for him down the building.
yeah,
It's like, you cannot make it more obvious than that. It's like
yeah, exactly.
his friends have his back, and it's heartwarming. It is heartwarming. I actually like this part about the anime because it dug deeper than just, oh, let's go back in time and fix things. It was not a
Right.
time travel anime. It was much more than that, and I think it was more about family than it was about powers or science fiction. And it also leads to this other thing, that the anime portrays itself as something that it isn't. And this I thought was so interesting, because I spent more than half the anime until, if I check my note, episode 7, which is above the halfway point, convinced that this anime was gonna be a murder mystery.
Mesdames et messieurs, I am a student of the psychology, and throughout this case, I have been looking
Of a whodunit kind of thing, and I was trying to gather clues to find who the killer was. But at the end of the day, whoever the killer was, it didn't matter. It was a nice twist, but that was not anywhere central to the story. Because if the killer had never shown up because Satoru managed to succeed at his mission, it would not have changed the heart of the story. And I even felt bamboozled because I was like, I spent so much time gathering clues, but nobody gives a crap about who the killer is.
Right. Yeah.
And I want to know, did you guys have any suspects?
The teacher.
The
Right from
teacher.
the get-go?
The teacher.
The teacher.
100%.
To me, the teacher was too obvious.
Yeah.
My guess was on Kenya. Kenya was a weird little dude.
He was weird.
Kenya, I forgot.
He's the
It's a
blonde
blood
best
friend.
Oh yeah, that crossed
He's
my
so-
mind.
He's so smart. I was like, you're way too young to read Edgar Allan Poe. You're not normal.
Yeah, yeah. He was a suspect, but I think the teacher gave me more, like a bad feeling overall.
It makes sense. The teacher had the looks, he had everything, but I didn't want to believe it. I was like, no.
Actually,
It's too obvious. I will not believe it.
yeah, and actually, when he goes back in the revival when he was a kid, in school, I thought, that teacher looks like the guy that was walking out of the apartment
Yeah,
after the
of the
mom
apartment.
was killed. So
Uh-huh.
so yeah, I think the anime does play with your mind and gives you a few hints. But yeah, I think he was the primary suspect. At some point you are like, oh no, he's good, but you never actually discard the possibility completely. I wanted to say something though about the something that I forgot. Guess it was related to family, but in general
Okay.
about the anime, that was related to how the dynamic between Satoru and his mother changed, and it was about his memories of his mom wanting him to forget, like that bad episode of his life, when the
Yeah.
kidnappings and also the murders and all that. And he constantly said that he recalls that his mom wished more than anything that he forgot all about that time. And actually, I think during one revival he recalls her mom talking to that journalist friend, and the mom says, there's nothing more that I want in life, there's nothing more that the last thing in other words, the last thing I would want would be for my son to keep all these bad memories because there
Yeah.
had been a kidnapping, right? So I think that goes hand in hand with trust. That is something that we did talk about, and how building trust doesn't actually mean that you have to erase your memory and that you have to forget and that you have to be unaffected and not be hurt. I think what built the trust that Anna was talking about, in family dynamics, is having very clear, very a clear picture that there are things that have hurt us. However, believing in our strengths rather in focusing on the weaknesses. I think that was a good part, because the mom, right before dying, she said, I should have believed in you, and
She had regrets.
yeah, she had the regret. And I also think that topic, everything is interconnected, right, in this anime.
Yeah.
But I think the topic of believing, with respect to the topic of the definition of hero, for me, when I saw the anime, I thought a hero, specifically in the scene, what was the blonde friend?
Kenya.
Kenya.
Kenya. He at one point told Satoru, you are already a hero in my eyes.
サトル、正義の味方ってさ、結果が出たからなれるってもんじゃないよ。お前はもうなってる。協力させてよ。俺もなりたいからさ。正義の味方。
I think it's the second revival, something like that, when Satoru
in the stairs, I think.
In the stairs, exactly.
Yeah.
Because he's like, hey Satoru, what's going on with you? You are like being extremely authentic. Like I can feel the difference in your personality. I actually want to partake and help you in whatever thing you are pursuing. I want to help you achieve your goal, whatever that is. And he said, I believe in you now. I don't feel that you are, that you're faking anything. That was also a topic discussed between Kayo and Satoru, I think, in the first episodes. So I think a hero also at the end, that story, I don't recall I think he actually writes his own manga, right? That is called My Hero at the end. The one
I
that
think so, yeah.
Yeah, the one that he had in his notebook. And that first part, when he's describing this character, he was saying, how he would confront these very hard opponents, although he had the odds against him, and how that inspired the others to join him. So I think in that way, for me, the way I saw it was, a hero is someone that inspires you to believe that you can actually achieve what you before thought was impossible. And also, from that came the community, the friends, and the picture of his friends is shown on his notebook. But yeah, those two things I think are interconnected. And regarding your question of any other suspicious characters, well, the Kayo's, I don't know if it was her stepfather.
It was, I think it was the mom's lover, from what I understood. It was like her boyfriend, right?
The boyfriend. Yeah, so because I think, in the second revival, they show the scene where Kayo is on the ground, unconscious, and he tells the mom, what do we do now? Right?
What do we do with the body? Because Anna
Exactly.
mentioned this when we were watching the show, and it's a very confusing moment because we see Kayo's body dead on the ground, and the parents being like, what do we do with the body? Oh my god. And later on we find out that they grabbed the body, put it in the little barn outside the house, but Kayo was not dead. And at that moment the killer found her, grabbed her, put her in the warehouse of the Yuki dude, the dude from the kitchen, and then sprayed her with water so she would die of hypothermia. And it was like this whole complicated plan that didn't seem to flow that organically. I was like, but did they kill her? Because to me, if it made sense that through different revivals, different events would happen, and maybe Kayo would be dead anyway. That was my guess when I saw that happen. I was like, oh, so if the killer doesn't get her, her parents will get her. So we need to save her from different dangers. Turns out no, and it was really strange to me. I know that you were confused about that for a little bit.
Yeah, me too. Like the way they explained it, it was strange because, like you said, someone says we need to do something about the body, and I'm like, okay, they beat her so badly that they killed her, right? Like there was no killer this time. There was no kidnapper. It was them. And just like you said, I thought the exact same thing. I was like, okay, so Kayo is gonna die no matter what he does, because if it's not the killer, it's gonna be someone else or something else. So I thought, what's gonna be the thing that's gonna change her destiny? But then the fact that it's actually the killer that grabs her from the little shed and kills her and brings her back. I was like, it's a little convoluted, you know,
far-fetched.
but I was like, sure, like her destiny changed, so this was the way for him to get her and kill her, I guess. So it's like, to me, it felt a little. This didn't fully work for me.
No, it was a little contrived because it would have been more interesting if there would have been different scenarios that Satoru had to fight against. Especially because there's a lot of red herrings in that show. They really want to deroute you into some other... Which is funny because the one dude that is the suspect, I think none of us thought that he was the murderer.
Yeah.
It's not possible. You see him and you're like, he's sweet. Sure, he's a little weird.
The 25-year-old?
The 25-year-old. Because he hangs out with kids and because there's a lot of things running against him. But we know these kinds of characters, and the ones that look too suspicious, they're never the ones. Never. Which is why I thought the teacher was not going to be it. I thought, you're way too suspicious to be a killer. And then the candy thing happened, and then so many things pile up. But the real sense that got me like, okay, you're the killer, was in episode 9. When Satoru comes clean to the teacher saying that he hid Kayo inside the bus. And then the teacher laughs and he says, the bus. It is a perfect hideout for a little kidnapper. And immediately I was like, why are you saying that? Why are you weird?
Yeah.
Like, why? And then everything makes sense. I was like, okay, you're the one. You're the one. You're the one. You cannot be anyone else. Like, nah, I was disappointed. I wanted someone else to be the killer, not the teacher.
He was a creep though, like
he was a creep.
He was, bro, you know, that the scene where he's driving with Satoru and he tells him why now it's necessary that he to kill him, that, you know, we have seen that same thing, I guess, in so many shows, movies, whatever, but it doesn't change the fact that that's a very realistic scene, you know, that actually happens. There's people that have this mindset, and there's definitely this battle between good and evil, I guess, and in a sense, you know, trying to change your own destiny for good versus just a satisfaction of an immediate impulse to fill a void, because that was like his phrase that he...
That was his phrase.
Like, yeah, that was like his most emblematic phrase, I guess, in the show, where he said, you know, that all of us have a void inside, right? And we have to try to fill it with something. And then at first, when you hear that, you're like, oh, this sounds very profound. And it turned out to be very deceiving, because what he was actually referring to was these impulses, you know, to like very psychopathic behavior. But that's why I feel it's a battle between, you know, like the good and the evil. And also I think it's connected to the topic that we discussed about what is a hero, because when you talk about a hero, I guess you have to talk about the villain as well. And this anime had so many themes, you know, just packed, that I was like, how are we going to talk about this? But one of the things at the end that I was surprised by was the fact that I thought, am I watching like Death Note or like... What is this? You know, it seemed like that same recurring villain versus hero, who's the villain, who's the hero, battle that is recurring in anime. And, you know, this guy wanting to kill Satoru, this kid, later on visits him for 15 years, had the opportunity to kill him and never did so because for some weird reason he found his purpose, he found a way to fill this void in his, in his enemy, so to speak, in the only one that could rival him. And this topic of rivalry, in anime, it's explored, to all the extents I think that are possible. So you have Berserk, whatever's Naruto, so many examples, but I think that is related to the hero. And what do you think about that phrase, filling the void, and how you can be deceived by a young age believing, in someone that tells you these things, and then it's actually you can go down a very dark path if you actually follow this type of advice. What do you think about that?
You can. I feel like you were mentioning with so many other animes, they're two sides of the same coin, Satoru and the teacher, because Satoru has this emotional void inside of him and this regret of never managing to save Kayo, even though back in the day they were not close. Because Satoru says, if I hadn't left you alone in that park that night, you would have never been taken. So he lives with that regret. He has a heavy heart. And at the same time, the teacher, who has those psychopathic impulses, he is drawn to kill over and over, and then he meets his equal, which flips the thing around, because when you're a kid, you see adults as figures of authority, and you usually don't question what adults do because that's not what you're supposed to do. Adults will always tell kids, I'm the adult, I'm the one who's right. So you're meant to believe that adults are right, and then you become an adult and you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So reaching this state, I'm actually really happy that I've watched this anime as an adult, quote unquote, is because I feel like it's easier to understand the point of view of the parents, specifically the mom. Not the teacher, because the teacher is pure evil, it's a different case, but the mom, but also the journalist, and also any adult character, it's easier to put ourselves in their shoes now that we're living through those things. And you're not just taking the kid at face value, being like, yeah, the kid wants to save everyone, cool. It's more complicated than that because it's more real than that. And I did enjoy the fact that it was grown-up Satoru who was narrating the story inside little kid Satoru, which made for a couple of jokes because kid Satoru is in love with Kayo, but then he keeps telling himself, dude, you're 29, don't even try. And it was funny because so many other animes are problematic like that. It's like, oh, this man is 1,000-year-old and this girl is 17. Let me show you what you're missing. And it's like, what? Okay. Like, is those things, is, but to round it up, I felt like it, unless I'm mistaken, I don't think the teacher has in those 15 years.
No, he hasn't killed anyone.
He
waited for Satoru to wake up.
Yeah.
Because he needed someone to rival him. He needed to end this thing. But then, once Satoru woke up, he was going to kill that little girl. So I guess he needed something to stimulate him, to keep him going. And he needed Satoru in this case, but not really, because he was going to frame him. There's a lot of things at the end that don't really make sense.
I feel like he was a sort of Joker to a Batman, in the sense of like, it's not like he was going to kill the girls to feel anything. He threatened to kill the girl, which he was going to do, but for Satoru to do something about it, right? He wants Satoru to do the thing that he does.
You're right.
I think you and I are destined to do this forever.
It's like he wants to be proven wrong or that he can be stopped by someone.
Yeah, he wants to see if Satoru can stop him this now. You know, like he's gonna. If this was like something that was gonna keep going always, it would be like Satoru behind him every single time, stopping every murder that he would plan. Right? Like he craved that thing.
He wants it, but he doesn't. You know what I mean? It's like
a guilty pleasure. It's like it's weird.
Because it's like, oh, let's see if he's gonna stop me. But if he doesn't, he's like, well, too bad he lost. You know, because he put his stupid fingerprints on top of the IV, like he was going to frame him, which is the most cowardly way of getting someone down. Like, this man is a full coward. But he was gonna kill that little girl, but I know, you're right, he wanted to taunt Satoru to do something. He was like, go ahead, stop me. Because he thought that Satoru had this thing, which once Satoru says, I know what's gonna happen in your future, I think that's the one that triggered his brain. Because he was like, what do you know? So he waited so long to hear this because he thought that Satoru had some kind of power advantage over him. But then once he found out that maybe it was just a coincidence, he was disappointed. He was like, you know what, I'm just gonna kill you.
But even then he couldn't kill him.
Even then he couldn't.
He saved him. You know, like.
But he saved him because Satoru was gonna kill himself.
Pretended,
and the teacher wanted to get himself, but he could not stomach to have Satoru end himself like this. It was not a proper death. It was like a little bit egotistical.
Yeah, it's a complicated mental, dynamic, because I'm just thinking about that and how, I can give so many animes as example that have a similar thing. One of them being Death Note, I forgot the name of the main guy.
L?
No, Light. Yeah, Light. When after he kills L, he's like, oh, now everything is so boring. I don't have no one to keep me entertained. And in the guy, boyfriend. What's that?
No, I said he had no more boyfriend.
Yeah, exactly. It's like he got depressed or something, like he went through a breakup. I don't know, but yeah. But my point is, what was the name of the teacher? I forgot again.
From the
for Erased. Yeah.
He's Senku's. No,
that's Dr.
Sorry,
Stone.
Dr. Stone. Sorry. Wait.
We didn't.
I didn't write his name.
Well,
Yashiro.
So in a way, like you can even see these scenes where
Naruto?
he had.
What jutsu is that?
He's called Goku, I think.
Come on, Anna. Come on.
I'm sorry.
We're doing a podcast here. This is serious.
Legit, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So in a way, when I was watching these scenes where, again I forgot. Sorry, it's not Goku.
Yashiro.
When these scenes where Yashiro would have like the knife literally by Satoru's neck.
When he was shaving him?
Exactly. I don't know if he was actually shaving him.
He was
shaving.
He was.
That's a razor, so he was like,
Yeah, but he was like, I got the feeling that, in any moment I can kill him, that he had that opportunity more than one time. And I think, did he also like bring him flowers? Was it him?
I think he might have, because a lot of people brought him flowers, but yeah.
Yeah, he was taking care of him.
Once he was shaving him, he had the knife right there, and he had total control, basically, but it wasn't fun to him.
Exactly. He toyed with that idea of ending his life. However, in some sense, I'm trying to understand their mind. I feel that in a weird way, they want to be freed from the, like he on one hand says, we all have this void and we need to fill it with something. But at the same time, that compulsion of I need to fill a void, I think it's hollow and repetitive in a way if you are not actually having some source of greater fulfillment. So in a way, I feel all these scenes, the him taking care of him, visiting him, saving him when he pretended he was going to kill himself, it was a way of, a cry for help in a way. Like, I want to be freed from these compulsions because I actually am not feeling this void. Like, this void is greater than what I could actually imagine. Like, he doesn't even understand himself. So I think that's a similar thing that is explored in anime. You can go through great extents to kill your greatest enemy, and we even see this in the fight between Naruto and Sasuke when they are like kids, and then Naruto is unconscious and Sasuke is right there, and he just leaves it there. He doesn't actually reach his goal. So in a way, I feel it's like a cry for help, that in a very twisted mind. So,
but it's an addiction. Really, it's an
Yeah.
addiction because he is obsessed. He's paranoid. He's like, once Satoru prevents him from he goes deeper and deeper into this rabbit hole and he goes crazy, the teacher, until he can stop Satoru. But it reminds me of the moment where Satoru pushes the glove compartment and all the candy starts pouring out.
サトル、そこは触っちゃ。
ごめんなこれは
サトル、見てしまったね。
And that's when you're like, he's a child kidnapper because he has so much candy. And then he's like, no, I'm sorry, you unmasked me. And he's very ominous. And then he's like, I replaced my addiction to cigarette with candy. But in this moment, he reveals himself a little bit. And I feel like this motif of addiction is very important because he is addicted to
in French.
He's a
motif in French.
What?
You said this motif. Did you say
yeah,
it?
motif. It's a word.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah. Bringing back my roots to the podcast. There we go. I'm gonna start saying like champagne, rendezvous. There we go.
King Kong le c'est ceci.
No, but the point that I'm
I
trying
was
to get
just
across
teasing
is,
you, yeah.
is he mentions addiction and it's a big theme. He is addicted, and the one thing that is not very clear but it's linked to his addiction is the spider web thing, the imagery. He talks about it at the end.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, because we were debating on that, and I'm not sure I fully understand what it meant, because at first he talks about someone that mistreated people, I think he killed people, the first dude.
In the story, the original story. Yeah, in the original story, he's like a low-life person. He robs, he steals, he kills, whatever. And then Buddha feels sorry for him, so he throws a thread, spider thread to hell so that he can save himself, because he showed kindness to a spider once. So Buddha saw that there was don't quote me here. I've heard the story saying that it was Buddha, but I don't.
It was Buddha.
Okay, so as an act of kindness, he deserved one act of kindness as well. But the problem was that because his selfishness was bigger, he wanted to be the only one to go up the thread and not let anybody else come with him. So the thread broke and he stayed in hell.
But I think the other people from hell were grabbing and pulling him down as well. And was it?
No, they were. The story goes that they were also trying to escape hell.
Oh, right.
But he was selfish, and he was like pushing them down.
Yeah.
So that they would not escape, and the thread broke because he was being selfish. He was not gonna allow others to take his opportunity, right? So that's how that metaphor goes.
And the teacher goes on and explains that his definition of the spider web is that every time he sees a victim, that victim is connected to that spider web.
Yeah.
So I think that there's multiple definitions. One is that those are genuinely good people, the one that he's gonna kill because that thread is like a thread of kindness, but at the same time that thread is connecting him to his victims, which is, it's, I think there's multiple meanings to this, but I feel like it represents the void in his heart, because what was missing from the man's life in the original story was getting out of hell, so the thread meant a way out. And for the teacher, this thread was a way towards making his void smaller, but it never did. It never did until he met Satoru.
Right. And even at the very end, I think when they are in the balcony, he sees the thread, like the spider.
He does, but you're not sure, and I wrote this, who is the spider web on? Because you only see the thread. So is it connected to Satoru or is it connected to the teacher?
Right, that's a good point.
Because I wasn't sure about that. I was kind of confused.
I think I assumed it was connected to Satoru.
I assume so. I think
Yeah.
it's the most logical way to go about this. But honestly, with this whole time jump, and because we're talking about the end, did you guys notice, because I talked to Anna about this, but in episode 11 the opening changed. Did you see that, Miguel?
The opening of
the show.
Was it black and white or something?
No, the opening plays the same as every other episode, except that they removed Satoru in the entire opening.
Oh, really? I didn't notice.
I noticed because I used to skip the opening because I wanted to watch more of the episode, but then the first scene of the opening is grown-up Satoru with his glasses walking inside a movie theater, and it starts right away. You see Satoru entering, and this opening started playing, and the movie theater is empty. So I went back and I rewatched it, and the last two episodes have this opening without Satoru. The scenes are exactly the same. You see the kids running down the stairs, talking to each other, and you see a void. Every time, because they remove Satoru from the opening. And this follows in episode 11 that the narrator changes and is the killer. It's not Satoru anymore. Plus, the inner voice of Satoru is not the adult, it's the kid. And I feel like it rounds it up to like going into a full circle kind of thing of, it used to be big Satoru in kid Satoru's body, and now it is kid Satoru growing up and finally getting the life that he deserves. Even though he missed 15 years of his life, he erased the old Satoru, to mention the name of the show, because I think that's where it comes from.
He's in, boys! He did it! He said it!
He replaced himself to the point where he didn't have to relive his whole life, because you can think that 15 years lost of your life is a lot, but at the same time, that's the duration that he went back in time. So technically he just picked up where he left off.
Right.
Gaining even 3 years, no, because he went back when he was 26.
Yeah, he had 3 years.
To get his life back together. So I think it was like, that was his spider web. That was his thread to finally get a better life.
Spider web?
Yeah, because like the original story of the web that got down from heaven to pull him out, I think that was his thread. That was his way of his salvation, if you will.
Right. But I guess I still don't fully understand that story, because it's related as it's portrayed as a reason to kill, so it's like confusing in a way. But I know what you mean. But on your same point about he didn't have to live again those 15 years that he lost, it actually, right now listening to that, once again this anime like gave me hope, in a way, because it's kind of, it gives you this message that you can't actually change the past. You cannot change the past. We don't have that superpower. We cannot go through a revival, and change what we did. However, we can, start believing without repressing or forgetting the bad memories. In the present, having this, you know, realistic understanding of our life, all the people that we have interacted with, on trying to understand them, we can actually live in a way that is worthwhile. That is, it's in a way redeeming. Is that a word? Yeah, it's like a way
Yeah.
to redeem ourselves, because many times we can actually be without a purpose, like him, Satoru, in the beginning. Like he doesn't really know what inspires him. He do, doesn't have the ability to dig deep down into himself, to know himself, and finds what motivates him. But I think it's very inspiring, and especially seeing the change in the relationship with the mother, seeing how Kayo later on tells him, you're the reason why I could realize that I don't have to be alone. Although you're like, oh, I don't know if, well, I guess yes, in that revival, he was still in love with her as a child. Was he?
I think so. I mean, they're children, right? So it's
Yeah.
not really like love.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of people complaining that they didn't end up together because she ends up with one of his friends. But
With which friend? I forgot.
The friend that actually got kidnapped and killed as well.
The one that looks like a girl.
The one that looks like a girl, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was okay. I was confused. At any point did they mention that he was a boy though?
Yeah, they actually kept mentioning the fact that because at some point it is important in the story, because adult Satoru goes to, the friend of the mom, the one with glasses,
The journalist.
He goes to his place because the journalist wants to help him, and Satoru says that the murders were the two girls and this boy, and that it was something that the murderer did in order to like distract people, because everyone was like, oh, he's only killing girls, and then boom, he kills a boy.
Absolutely.
So
yeah,
it was an important detail, but he looks like a girl. So
But because they do mention that at the time the police thought that it was a mistake, and that he killed this boy because he thought it was a girl. But turns out the real motive behind this was that he wanted to kind of derail people,
To throw them in
pretend
for
that
a
he
loop.
didn't know the victims, but then he did. It was like to make it more random than it was.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
But it's unclear that they ended up together. You just see at one point that she has her baby and she's next to him, so you assume that. But
no, because
she mentions him by name.
Satoru asks she changed her last name to the last name of this guy, and he's
Right.
like, oh, so he is the dad.
今は結婚して杉田佳代になったよ。
ああ、その子の父親ってヒロミ？
And she's like, yeah, he's the dad.
You're right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, but I guess that shows at the end that although he missed those 15 years, he still chose to impact for good the people that were part of his life, his friends. And I think another topic, of this anime was what friendship is, and a friend being someone who actually sees the potential in you and believes in you, and
you got a friend in me.
Helps motivates you to believe in yourself. Same as what the pizza delivery girl, the colleague, what was
Yes.
It was
Airi.
Yeah. And I just thought about this. I don't know how true it would be, but I realized that The revivals would happen when someone had the thought of believing in Satoru, like the first revival. Well, the second, I guess, because when the mom is killed and she's on the floor, she thinks I should have believed in you, and then soon
That's
after
true. I didn't notice that. And then the second time is the girl yelling.
and then
Heidi.
yeah, exactly. And then at the end, and when he sees the butterfly one last time, the first thing he says is, "I never stopped believing, in you," or something. So I think believing, in someone and helping them find their potential in living a life that is worthwhile is a big topic of this anime, and it's very moving. So I was glad that I watched it and that we discussed it as well. So
do you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted to do a little small, like, little thing, like little parallel, is that there is this movie called It's About Time, right? This is a romance movie, but the point is that the main character has a similar power to Satoru, as in he can go back in time to the same day. So basically, he can choose to relive the same day, or no, he can even go back in time like years in the back. But the point is that during the movie, he specifically, they show that he sometimes has like crappy days. So he chooses to go back in time and he's like, okay, I'm gonna redo this day and try to fix the mistakes that I did to, like, so that my day is not so crappy. So little by little he starts doing this thing. And then as the more he does this, he actually stops using his power, because it's like, now I don't need to go back to each day, because now what I did to make the days better before, I just do them by myself on my own, like in the present. I don't need to go back and redo anything, So he learned to appreciate like little things that would bother him. People who were annoying, he would like laugh and be like, oh, this person is like probably having a bad day, or he would not let himself be bothered basically by anything, because he learned to appreciate life from reliving it so much, right? Like so many things like that he had to like go through again and again and again made him learn that not everything is negative, like he could turn everything into a positive, to the point where he did not need to go back and fix the quote-unquote mistakes, right? Even if, like, for example, his boss treated him badly or something, he didn't go back. He would just accept it as like, oh, this thing. So it's like, it's very similar to Satoru in the sense of like, after going back and solving like a bunch of like very like big stuff, he comes back. He doesn't need the revival anymore. He doesn't. The power, we are meant to assume that it's gone, because he mentions that it hasn't happened like lately, or ever since the whole thing with the teacher. And we are left to assume that he, just like from this movie, the guy, like Satoru, learned to live his life in a way that he would not need the revival anymore. Like, he would not need to stop tragedies if these tragedies didn't even happen to begin with. Not talking about like the first one where the kid was gonna die. Of course, that's something that is out of like almost no one could stop that, right? But like in his own life, he learned to live in a way that he would not have to have regrets in the future, being like, ah, damn, I wish I could go back and fix that thing, right? And I feel like that's like the big learning thing that I gathered back when I watched that movie years ago, and now that I watched Erased, it's like, yeah, it's like a nice learning thing that is like, it's not easy, but if you live your life every day in a way that if you look at it tomorrow, you're like, I don't regret anything.
Life is not a waste of time. Time is not a waste of life. So let's not waste any time. Chicago, and have the time of our lives.
Then you achieved the whole point of like filling the void, right? That was the thing that Satoru was
it's
was missing.
living without regrets. That's, I think, all anyone can wish for, and I think that's what he finally achieved. But I just wanted to do like a side note to connect with this as a closing thought. But I was telling you guys earlier before the podcast, but it took me so long to figure out that the whole butterfly, because I saw the butterfly and I was like, it has to mean something, because you don't choose a butterfly for no reason. And usually Japanese media likes to use the imagery of animals or insects or something very that evokes something. And in this case, the butterfly, it reminded me of the principle of the butterfly effect, that the span of the wing of one butterfly can snowball into a different future. Anything that changes in the past can link to something else. And there's this movie, to kind of what you were saying, called The Butterfly Effect, literally, with Ashton Kutcher, who he has a similar power where he goes back in time, changes one little thing, then goes back in the present, and nothing is the same. And I had a hard time wrapping my head around this for Erased, because I was wondering if it would have been a good or a bad thing to have Satoru go back in the present and realize that his life is different, but always for the worse, or at least differently. Like, oh, I prevented Kayo from dying, goes back in the present. Oh, like someone else died, for example, because that's the story of the butterfly effect. And I'm like, now that I think about it, I'm actually glad that it didn't happen, because it was different. It was not like a race around the clock of trying to change everything, because Satoru won at the end, but he lost also a lot of things. He ended up in a coma. He won everything, but he also had to lose everything in order to gain everything. He lost Kayo because she left. He lost his childhood because he was in a coma. He lost Heidi, which she came back at the end, but he lost his old self in favor of a new self. And I feel like it was very much a symbol of being reborn. He was reborn from his ashes, could start a new life. And what I wrote was that his powers were both a blessing and a curse to finish the unfinished business. He tied up loose ends. Satoru lost, but he won. He gave it his all, and he still gets his happy ending. And I think that's what matters at the end of the day.
Agree. Totally agree. That was profound. Yeah. I think overall, I agree with both of you. You know, it's like this anime, you know, compels you, motivates you, moves you to live your life in a way that you won't regret. And many times, you know, that saying, it's used as an excuse to justify your behavior. Oh, I live without regrets. I, you know, do whatever I want, and I had to do that because I needed to learn or whatever. But I guess that's not really the point of the anime. It's more, you know, every decision you make and every moment that you live, actually valuing it and knowing that it's futile, you know, that it won't last forever, and making your best to cherish it, like cherish those moments. And I think this is something that we have talked about sometimes, us regarding Anna's mom, like, you know, when we had a trip or whatnot, and she would say, you know, later on you'll realize how important these memories were, and you'll cherish them, and you wish you could come back. And it's something that I also talk about with my mom. And, you know, it's not things that we can take for granted, and this anime definitely is a reminder of that. So one final thing that I guess I could add would be that you said revival, or this anime used revival as a symbol of showing you that you don't actually need revival. You know, you don't actually need to go back because you can't. You know, what you need to do is do the best with what you have in the present and realize that you can impact your life through your decisions, and also live without this, like, put the baggage where it has to be put, and leave that aside, and deal with what you have to deal with emotionally. And that reminded me also of Anna used an example of the movie, and I just thought about Naruto, like, I think the fight between Orochimaru and Sarutobi Sensei. When Sarutobi is about to die, he when as he's closing his eyes, he sees Orochimaru as a little kid. I don't know if you remember. Even when he killed him, he was dying, and he saw the good in him, and I guess this Erased tries to show us that, there is a way to actually, even if you're hurt, even if, whatever you have been through, you can choose to see people, the good in people. So that's it for
I think
me.
that sums up I think we went through most of the important topics, and I think I speak to everyone when I say that we all recommend this anime. It's a short watch. It's something that I feel like makes you reflect a lot on your own life, because there were moments in this anime where I felt like I told you, the moment when Satoru was back to being young in the first revival, and he said that he took all those moments with his mom for granted. And me, I'm closing on 30, and I think about those moments when I was a kid, and I would just wake up and breakfast would be ready. It's something you don't even realize what you have. And it's not the material thing, it's just that your parent made that for you. You woke up, you ate it quick, you left. And today, what I would give to just sit back at that table and actually take my time. And
fair enough.
We cannot ever have that. So now we can have other things. If your parents are still with you, you can catch up on the old times. You can have different sorts of experience to make sure that you don't take those for granted. And I think that's what this anime is trying to remind us, that no matter what time passes and no matter where you are in life, there's still time. There's still time to make things right. And as long as you act on what's right for yourself and for others, then things are gonna be fine. At the end of the day, things are gonna be fine.
That scene is so powerful. Like, when he sees the mask of his hero, when I see any toy from my childhood, I'm like, it's like I get blown away. It brings back so many memories. It's like this, infinite joy that you cannot compare it to any material thing in life. And that is the same, with our parents, siblings, family, friends. I was telling Anna before, I wish I could have spent time with you guys on my birthday, and all those memories that we share from growing up. And it's crazy that time can pass, and they are still real, in the sense that we remember them, and as long as we remember them, they are alive, and we can cherish them, and we can look forward to something, because from that point on, as you said, Satoru with his mom, there was never again any other complaint on his end. Even the way she said, oh, she's a demon, she's a witch, it was like a happy thing from that point on. It was like he needed to feel, I don't know what it is, he needed to
feel grateful. I feel
grateful,
even when he had to eat curry 6 days in a row, and we all know that feeling when your parents tell you, no, there's McDonald's at home. It's awful when you're a kid because you don't think about those things and you're like, no, I want to eat what I want to eat, but then you don't realize that that's like, I don't know, your parents still made that food and you can make it a moment. You don't have to have a special menu for yourself. That's not the point of having a dinner with your family.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's those little things. It wasn't very pushed on during the anime. It was light enough, but it was important enough. I feel like they didn't do too much with it. It was like, because the mom is saying, oh, I made like lots of curry, and he's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna eat it for like 5 days, it doesn't matter. And then a couple days afterwards, she's like, what do you want to eat? He's like, I want to eat like beef. So she makes him a hamburger. And it's those little complicit moments between the two that I thought were really touching, and I felt like it really held the anime the whole time, and I feel like that's why the mom is probably the best character.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
when the mom cooks breakfast for Kayo,
Oh, no,
That
that
kills
scene,
me. That killed me.
that scene, I was like, bro. And I think the mom had a way of seeing through people. Remember, that's why he kept saying, oh, she's a witch. But she, like, and I have also been thinking about this, you know, how important food is when you're a children, and you know, your parents, like your mom, your dad, cooking, you know, a dish for you. I remember, you know, eating lasagna when I was young, and then some things that I had forgotten the importance of. And you know, watching that anime, I was just so moved by that. And then Kayo, that never had that experience, the mom is like, I'm gonna give this to you. I'm gonna make you feel seen for the first time in a way that not even Satoru, that's his name, right? Yeah. And then not even Satoru could make her feel, because it's different a friend from a parent, you know. And the mom sent her the note. Like, Satoru didn't even mention that he was hiding Kayo in the yeah. The mom already knew, and she sent the note in the lunch bag and said, these are all the favorite things of my son, right? The same love that she showed Satoru, she showed Kayo, and I felt, wow, this is very special. And you can say, oh, food, whatever, it's just, you know, calories, blah blah blah, but food, shared food with family when you're a kid, that's like a spiritual experience, honestly.
But you people show love through food a lot. That's a very big thing. Like, making a meal for someone has a much deeper meaning than just calories, like you were saying. It's not just ingesting food, it's not energy. Food is like, I feel like food is the basis of a lot of social relationships in families, because that's the one moment where everyone sits around together. Because you have work, you have school, you have your activities, you have so many things, but this is the one moment where the whole family can finally breathe and spend time together. Like, I come from a family of 5, so we were 3 kids and 2 parents, and I know that in a house with 3 boys running around the whole time and being like, like, I want to do this, and they're screaming, they're playing, there's whatever. Dinner time was the one moment where the whole family was together, and it's something that you cannot replicate. You cannot copy that. It's just too special.
Totally. Anna, any final thoughts?
I think that I agree with what you were both saying about what's the final meaning of the anime, what's the final purpose. I assume of the mangaka that was to, like, basically make people appreciate life, because you don't have the revival, but in a way you do. You know, you can go back in your mind, see certain things and put them into perspective and be like, you know, that thing is so meaningful to me now, and it starts seeing things with a different eye. Like like you have the choice to do that. It's gonna make your life be meaningful, right? And it's like, because it's like finally in the end the main character goes back into the present, and it's like it's not like he's living this wonderful beautiful life as a child. It's like the whole point is to go back to where he was, but in a better way. So
Right.
I do think that that's the final like message, and I really appreciate it. And like you said, we really recommend this anime. Go watch it.
Go
It's really
watch it.
good. It's really short,
Yeah.
and it makes you reflect a lot. I mean, aside from the fact that the story is actually interesting, not just about reflecting on yourself, but there's also like a whole plot that is very interesting. But yeah, it's really nice.
That name.
That name.
Well, I guess this is our closing statements, and well, we hope you guys enjoyed it, and we want to make more episodes about more anime. So if by any chance you have any recommendations, slide them down in the comments below, leave a like, subscribe to our channel, and let's keep the conversation going.
Let us know what you thought about this conversation. Do you think it's very similar to other podcasts? Do you think we provided some new perspectives? Any recommendations, as Marvin was saying? Our channel is called The Three Hokages. So keep up with it. Thank you for watching, guys.
Thank you. Keep us in mind, and we'll see you guys soon.
Thank you for coming. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye everyone.